Well, I mean, it's hilarious because, okay, let's put healthcare aside for a second, because here's the other thing. The far left will push ideas that are not popular with the general public, right?
Yes.
So I think that protecting, marginalized communities, protecting the transgender community is important. However, when you move out of or move far away from making sure that they are not denied housing, making sure that they're not denied healthcare, when you move into like these more fringe areas of like, I mean, there was a story out of the UK this week, blows my mind. There was an LGBTQ group in the UK who suggested that instead of referring to uh, vaginas as vaginas because it might be offensive to transgender men, one of the potential replacements or substitutes could be bonus hole.
Oh no.
Why? Why does the left do this? I understand it's like a fringe thing, but like, who in their right minds thinks that, okay, let's just like redefine every word and come up with like the dumbest shit possible?
Bonus hole?
Yeah, bonus hole.
Okay.
And
Oh no.
listen, people don't like this stuff. Okay. They might not be on Twitter talking about how much they dislike this stuff, but on average, every normie woman I've talked to is like, I can't stand this stuff, right? So what Jake and I recently talked about it. I think we talked about it in the context of, trans athletes or whatever. And it was, hey, we got to be a little more strategic because if you do this, if you start pushing the mainstream Democratic Party to run their campaigns on these like fringe issues, they might not get reelected or they might not get elected at all if they're running against a Republican in a district. And the response, and it's the same response we got when we made the same point about the stupid prison abolition movement, is we don't care. We don't care. This is the right thing to do. We don't care. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, okay. But then you complain about what Republicans are doing in various red states. So do you want more Republicans to get elected? And do you want more of these, look, I think that some of these laws that have been passed in various red states, for instance, banning gender affirming care for adults, between the ages of 18 to 25, I think that's wrong. I think adults should be able to make a decision about their own bodies. I do think that there is a worthwhile debate when it comes to, hormone blockers and cross sex hormones for children. And we should have that debate in good faith. But I don't want the pendulum to swing far to the right. I would venture to say the left feels the same way, except I'm not so sure. Because to them, going on Twitter and patting themselves on the back for being the most pure is more important to them than strategy. It's more important to them than actually accomplishing.
Is the AI broken? They're not even mining. They're just like, they have like one harvester that's actually doing anything. The rest are just chilling out. It's like there's an AI pathing issue.
The policies that they claim to want to accomplish. Every time
Now I don't feel good about the victory.
I make that point, they'll be like, oh, but you don't even know. There are people on the ground, activists on the ground, working hard to make this happen. And it's like, I mean, I'm not blind. I see what's happening in the country right now. So you
Mhm.
can tell me about, your imaginary on the ground activists making real change happen as we speak, but I'm not buying it.
Mhm.
So it is what it is. And they can get as offended as they want. They can get as upset as they want. I don't really care. I'm not a mouthpiece for anyone, any political party, any political group. My obligation is to share the facts of the story with my audience to the best of my ability and then do good faith analysis on those stories. And if they don't like my analysis,
One thing that's been interesting for me is this sort of feeling that she's talking about, where no longer are you, if you're not part of a movement, a community, a political ideology, you're just an independent person, which is what I sort of think of myself as now, even though I am, quote unquote, on the left, I'd say, I guess you can say. But as an independent person, not associated with any particular movement, like I was with Gamergate, for instance, you approach things very differently. You don't have a team, really. You're just a person. You can play with ideas and consider things from multiple angles, and that's totally cool. Whereas, even when I was part of Gamergate, um, I did feel like I had to sort of, well, I felt like I was a representative of the movement, which I was. So I had to present myself in a certain way to always put the best foot forward and make the movement look good. So that was like how that affected me with Gamergate. With Gamergate, with this channel, I had to basically make every decision I made had to make Gamergate look good or at least not look bad. It had to be neutral or positive because I was representing not just myself but the tens of thousands of people who were involved, and that had certain expectations that went along with that, or that should have went along with that. And I think that's fine. I think that's probably positive that you want to represent your movement well. That's part of the problem with the trans stuff, right? They're part of a movement, and they a lot of them work together, the activists, but they don't care about how they look at all. They just engage in really bad activities on the internet. And not just like the trans activist community, but like the activist community at large. They just have like an awful reputation, and most of it is like deserved. And obviously, there's problems with that with not just them, but the left and the right in general. So they probably should care about the optics of their movement and the optics of their political parties, and try to put the best foot forward and act with grace and dignity. But also, when you're not on a team, which I don't really think I am right now, you're really free to just think about things. Like I don't have like if somebody brings something up to me, let's say it's some left wing idea, right wing idea. Like generally speaking, when I talk about it or I think about it, I'm not like, oh well, I'm on the left, therefore my opinion should be X because that's the left wing position, or my opinion should be Y because that's the right wing position. I just sort of like consider it from multiple angles, especially if it's something I've not know very little about or don't really care that much about. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh well, you brought up abortion. I don't care about abortion, so therefore I'm just gonna go spout whatever random talking points I've heard. Like no, like whatever, we can have the conversation. Although that's probably a bad example for me because I do have, I think, fairly well-formed views on abortion. But pick another topic and you can apply the same logic.
They can make whatever decision they want about whether they support or watch the show. And that's why I say I might be engaging in a little bit of self-sabotage, because I don't know what the outcome of all of this is going to be. You know, there is no big play here. I'm not leaving TYT. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I don't know what the outcome will eventually be, to be honest.
I have a kind of contentious take. I'm curious how you feel about it, where, I look at you called them the small, loud minority on Twitter. That we have this kind of like far left identity obsessed, we don't care about practicality, kind of purity spiraling group of people. And, the reason I think that this is happening is that for whatever reason, there's been this shift among a lot of young people, especially online, where there's a shift away from the philosophy of liberalism into more of a socialistic philosophy. And do you see that happening from your perception?
I do. I think that to some extent I subscribe to that. And look,
This is actually an interesting question because there might actually be some truth in it. Like I used to sort of like say years ago, I'd say like, oh well, whatever. I mean, these people don't even know what socialism is, and that's true of both the left and the right. Most people who use the word socialist don't seem to know what it is. They can't define it. The worker ownership of the means of production would basically be the only real definition. That that one that everyone who's like actually a socialist would agree on, and two that I think meets the actual dictionary definition of socialism, the worker ownership of the means of production or attempts thereat, which doesn't describe social democrats, which is more or less what I am. But there is sort of a change. It's not just weird kids who think that, oh, the government doing stuff is socialism. Like there's now a movement of people that actually believe in it. They actually do believe in it. And a lot of these people are market socialists. Well, some of them are market socialists, which is like whatever, who cares? Market socialism. Like I'm not there, and I'm not sure I ever will be because I don't know if it's economically efficient or as economically efficient as capitalism. But like whatever, it's not like a dangerous thing. Um, it's not a dangerous thing in terms of being anti-democratic. That is, it could be bad economic policy, which carries with it its own sort of moral considerations if you have an inefficient system. But there's also a lot of tankies, like actual legit Marxist-Leninists and people who don't believe in democracy and liberal values anymore. And that's wild. And that's also on the right too. I think it's probably worse. It's definitely worse on the right. They don't even believe elections are real. A lot of them are moving away from liberalism explicitly. They're even calling themselves post-liberal, like Sohrab Ahmari. And you have these people who are trying to make everything about race and ethnicity and about gender too, with some of the red pill stuff, like women shouldn't vote. We talked about that. We watched Pearly Things video. Yeah, and they're explicitly moving away from democracy and liberalism on the right. On the left, it's not taking hold of the Democratic Party, but on the internet, there definitely are a lot of illiberal leftists.
Honestly, I'm
And I don't think that was the case. I don't think that was the case 10 years ago. 10 years ago, everyone on the internet was a libertarian. Now it's very divided. People on the internet are all across the political spectrum, and a lot of them are crazy populists, especially on social media, especially on political social media.
at a point where I want to